He was conscious for 27 hours. He talked with the rescue team. They passed him water. He spoke to his wife over a police radio. And the whole time there was air. The crack he was wedged in opened into the rest of the cave. Breathing was never the problem. What killed him wasn't a lack of air. It wasn't drowning, and it wasn't the walls crushing him. What killed him was the angle his body was stuck at. Head down, feet up, 27 hours upside down in a crack in the rock, 400 feet from the entrance, while more than 100 people tried everything they had and could not change one simple fact. A body that goes into a hole headfirst cannot always be pulled back out. The cave itself was never the kind of place that kills people. Nutty Putty sits in the hills south of Salt Lake City, and for decades it was one of the friendliest caves in Utah. Warm inside, humid, floored and walled with a soft clay that gives the place its name, the kind you can push a thumb into. Somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 people went through it every year. Scout troops, college students, families on a weekend. Experienced cavers rated it intermediate. Not a beginner's cave, but nowhere near the extreme end. You went in on your belly, wound through some tight passages, came out grinning. In roughly half a century of people crawling through it, no one had ever died there, not once. Rescuers had been called in 5 times over the previous 10 years, pulled people out of tight spots, including a teenager in 2004, and every time everyone came home. On November 24, 2009, John Edward Jones went in with his younger brother Josh and a group of family and friends, 11 of them, give or take. Jones was 26, a medical student, fit, experienced underground, the kind of person you'd want with you in a tight cave, not the kind you'd worry about. He'd been in harder caves than this one. This was supposed to be the easy trip. The group split up inside, the way people do. Some stayed in the wider rooms. Jones and a few others went looking for a specific passage, one with a name. The Birth Canal. A notoriously tight squeeze, but a known one, a safe one, because it has a turnaround at the end. You wriggle through, the space lets you rotate, and you come back out the way you came. Cavers do it for the thrill of the tightness, knowing the cave will let go of you at the far end. Jones never reached the Birth Canal. Somewhere along the route, he turned into an unmapped passage running off the main way, a stretch that wasn't on any chart, and crawled down it on his belly, deeper, looking for the squeeze he thought he was in. It dead-ended. No open room, no continuing passage, just a narrow fissure dropping away downward at the end of it. And here's the decision the whole thing turns on. He believed this was the turnaround. He thought the tight vertical slot in front of him was the spot where the cave would let him rotate and head back. So he went into it the only way it would take him. Head first, downward. There's a rule cavers hold on to for exactly this reason. You never go head first and downward into a squeeze you can't see the end of. Because until you're in it, you have no way to know whether it opens up ahead of you or closes. He couldn't see the end of this one. He went in anyway, believing it would open. It closed. The fissure he pushed into measured 18 inches by 10, 46 centimeters by 25. Lay this phone down and picture a gap barely wider than it is long, in solid rock, angled steeply downward. He drove into it head first and his body wedged, chest and abdomen pinched into a slot about 10 inches across, the rock pressing on him from both sides, holding his ribcage in a grip he couldn't expand. His head hung below his feet at roughly a 70-degree angle, close to straight down, 400 feet from the entrance, tens of meters below the surface. The more he was in it, the worse the geometry got. One arm was pinned beneath his own body. The other was trapped above him, useless. He couldn't push. There was nothing to push against that would move him the right way, and every shift of his weight settled him deeper into the taper of the crack. His brother Josh reached him first. He got hold of Jones's legs and pulled. It made it worse. Instead of coming free, Jones slid further down into the narrowing slot, jamming himself tighter, dropping his head lower. Pulling on him was the obvious thing to do, and it was the wrong thing, and there was no way to know that until it had already happened. Josh couldn't move him. Nobody near him could. So he did the only thing left. He turned around in the dark and crawled 400 feet back up through the cave, alone, to go get help for his brother. Behind him, Jones hung upside down in the rock and started to wait. Hours passed before the next person reached him. Her name was Susie Matola, a volunteer with the rescue team, and by the time she worked her way down to the fissure, Jones had been upside down in it for around 3.5 hours. When she got to him, she couldn't see a face. She couldn't see a person. All she could see sticking out of the crack in the rock was a pair of running shoes. She told him who she was, that she was there to help. And from inside the rock, upside down, 3.5 hours into it, he answered her. "Hi, Susie. Thanks for coming. But I really, really want to get out." Polite, calm, almost apologetic to the stranger who'd crawled into a cave in the middle of the night to reach him. That was the tone of him through most of what followed. Over the next 20-some hours, more than 100 people would funnel into Nutty Putty to try to get John Jones out. Dozens at a time, working in shifts, threading down a passage barely wide enough to pass a body through, toward a man they mostly couldn't see. They could hear him. They could reach a hand to him. They could pass him water. What none of them could do, yet, was the one thing he was asking for. To understand why over 100 trained people couldn't pull one man out of a crack, you have to understand what his body had become inside it. He'd gone in head first and downward. That direction is the whole problem. Everything about human anatomy that lets you push forward into a tight space works against you when someone tries to draw you back out of it. Your shoulders, your hips, your arms, they fold one way going in and jam the other way coming out. His arms were the proof. One pinned under him, one trapped above. To pull him free, rescuers would have to drag his full body weight straight up against the taper of the slot, against the friction of rock on his chest, against gravity. Pull hard enough to actually move him, and you're pulling hard enough to tear shoulders out of their sockets. His brother had already learned the gentler version of this lesson. Tugging on him sent him deeper, so they couldn't pull. That left cutting the cave itself. Teams went at the rock with air-powered chipping tools, trying to shave the fissure wider, working in a passage so tight the rescuers could barely get their own bodies down to where he was, let alone swing a tool. Progress was measured in inches over hours. In the dark, hanging in a space built for one person, above a man wedged below them. Think about where this sits against the other places we've stood. Those caves killed with the environment. Rock overhead, a counterfeit exit, a route with no way back, a void with no landmark. This one is different and, in a way, worse, because the environment here is harmless. The cave is dry. The air is fine. The passage even opens up below him. What was killing John Jones wasn't the cave. It was the shape his own body was locked into inside it. An angle, nothing more. And an angle is not something you can chip away with a drill. While they worked on the rock, the angle was working on him. A human body is not built to be upside down for long. Stand a person on their head and gravity stops helping and starts pressing. Blood drains downward, into the head, and pools there. The heart, which normally lets gravity carry blood back down from the brain, now has to fight gravity on every beat, pumping uphill against the weight of the body to push blood back toward the feet. For minutes, you'd be fine. For an hour, it's punishing. Jones was there for more than a day, and his chest couldn't rescue him. To take a full breath, your ribcage has to expand, and his was clamped in a 10-inch slot of rock that would not let it open. He could move air, the cave was full of it, but every breath was shallow, worked for, taken against the stones squeezing his lungs. The cold of the cave pulled at him on top of that, draining heat, adding load to a heart already straining. So hold the strange center of this. There was air the entire time, right there, all around him. He was never suffocating in the way you picture it, never starved of a room full of oxygen he couldn't reach. The air didn't kill him, the angle did. Same as Fargs with a working tank on his back. Same as Exley with a full cylinder on his hip. The environment gave them everything they needed to breathe, and they still didn't come out. The hours upside down did what the rock alone couldn't. They wore his heart down, beat by beat, in a position his body was never meant to hold. And somewhere in there, the calm cracked. At one point into the dark, he said it plainly. "I'm going to die right here. I'm not going to come out of here, am I?" And then, late on the second day, they almost proved him wrong. The rescuers had rigged the one thing that could actually beat the angle. A system of ropes and pulleys, anchored into the cave, designed to lift his full weight straight up out of the slot in a slow, controlled pull. The machine doing what human arms in that cramped space never could. And it worked. They hauled him up, several feet, out of the taper, out of the worst of it. For the first time in nearly a day, John Jones was moving in the right direction. A rescuer got close enough to make eye contact with him. They passed him water. After more than 20 hours upside down, there was suddenly a real reason to believe he was coming home. The whole system hung on an anchor set into the roof of the cave. The anchor tore loose. When it failed under the strain, it let go violently. A carabiner whipped off the rigging and struck one of the rescuers, Ryan Schertz, full in the face, breaking his jaw. And with the system gone, John Jones dropped, back down the slot, head first, back into the exact position it had taken them a full day to lift him out of. One volunteer said it felt like a slap in the face. Everything undone in a second. And here's the thing I can't get past. A man who had been upside down in rock for over 24 hours, who had just felt rescue and lost it, whose own heart was failing, heard that a rescuer had been hurt. His words were not about himself. "Is he okay? I think he's really hurt bad." After the fall, he began to slip away. The panic that had mostly stayed off him started to close in, and the rescuers did the one thing left that might steady him. They got his wife on the line. Emily was pregnant, waiting at the surface, and they patched her voice down to him through the radio. Hearing her, his father said afterward, lifted him. He promised her he'd get out. Promised he'd be there for her and their children. Not long after, his breathing began to fail. Shallow to begin with, fighting the rock on every inhale, and now weakening. He struggled to stay conscious, and then he couldn't. A doctor who managed to work down close enough checked him and found no pulse. John Edward Jones was pronounced dead just before midnight, around 27 hours after he'd gone into the crack. He was 26 years old. The sheriff said the exact cause of death would probably never be known for certain. The likely factors were the ones that had been working on him the entire time. The inverted position, the cold of the cave, a body held too long in a shape it was never meant to hold. More than 100 people, air-powered tools, drills, ropes, pulleys, a full day and night of effort by rescuers who were, some of them, experts with decades underground. And none of it could undo one plain fact of geometry. A body that goes into a hole head first and downward cannot always be brought back up through it. The cave never had to do anything to him. It just had to hold still. They had to decide what to do with him next. And the decision was the hardest kind. Bringing his body out would mean sending more people back down into the same slot, under the same failing anchors, into the same passage that had just nearly killed a rescuer with a broken jaw. Everyone who met to decide it, the landowners, the cave managers, the sheriff's office, and Jones's own family agreed. No one else would go into that crack. His body would stay where it was. A few days later, they made it permanent. Crews collapsed and sealed the passages and poured concrete into the entrance of Nutty Putty Cave, closing it for good with John Jones still inside it. The cave he died in became the thing that marks his grave. There's a plaque at the sealed entrance now, in the Utah hills, over a cave no one will ever enter again. He never met the child his wife was carrying. Emily was pregnant when he went into the cave, and their baby was born after the entrance was already sealed, into a family that had lost him underground. Think about what actually took him. Not depth, not water, not gas, not a monster in the dark or a wall that gave way. A dry cave a weekend crowd walked through by the thousands, air all around him the entire time, and a single wrong angle, head first and downward, that more than 100 people could not reverse. The most dangerous thing in that cave was the shape a body could fold into and never fold back out of. Beneath doesn't stop at the surface. Subscribe, and we'll take you to the next quiet place that only asks one wrong move.